Today I'm reviewing the HIGVR M4 3.0, not to be confused with the 2.0, which has been out in the wild for a short while. But even that, there's not a lot of content around it. This is the HIGVR M4 3.0, and it is indiscernible from a regular firearm to a point. Everything about it screams an M4 assault rifle. I could talk all day about the build quality of this and all the features that it offers, and some of it is unnecessary, but the fact that they put this together in such a way that it is the gun that you're firing in Onward, like it's pretty wild how accurate this thing is. And even sharing it with friends who are firearm enthusiasts, people in the military, aside from one aspect, it's the real thing. And so I'm going to talk about this device today, and you'll find it linked down below, and you can save 10% off if you use my link. I can tell you that in the end, it's a fantastic device. It offers a ton, and it's incredible that they pulled all this off. And it's only complemented by the fact that they have this glove that goes with the gun. And what it does in game for PCVR is wild. There are caveats and hiccups, but when it works, it is the best Gunstock that money can buy. Need this fantasy. Alright, so getting into this gun, there are a few things I need to talk about, but we're going to focus on what it's capable of. Not what it does, but what it can do if the API is implemented to the fullest extent, to where a game developer integrates every single thing that this Gunstock can do. Right here we have a switch for burst and single fire, and then safety. And everything I mention here has the potential to work in game. So that if they implemented the API in such a way that, like, it took all of these sensors into account, everything would work to where no controller is necessary, and you're just fiddling with the gun to get literally every single thing done. On the back right here, there is a button to release that ammo, and when I press it, the ammo comes out. And I'm going to get back to this. We're going to put this away for now, but it slides in, and it's in. Now on the back, you have that mechanism to pull back and charge that firing mechanism. And when you receive it, this will be on the back, like so. And there's a spring to where you can pull it back and it snaps back in. That broke in the first 5 minutes of me using it, and I was just devastated. It was a nightmare. It's not something that I'm going to use in most games, but aesthetically, I want it to be there. And for that purpose, I'll probably shave this down and glue it back in. The alternative is that I take this entire gun apart, find the spring, rehook everything up, and hope that the Gorilla Glue I used on this will be sufficient, and it won't. But, like everything else on this gun, the spring that attaches to this has the potential, in a game that implements every single aspect of that API, to make use of that pull and snap back function on this weapon. But also, like everything else on this weapon, most of these features are not going to be used. If you're playing Onward or Contractors, which I think is probably 99% of the people using this gun, it's not something you need to worry about. So for you, it's just something to look at and to marvel at kind of how accurate it is to the original weapon. This gun comes with a controller pad right here. And as you can see, we have a joystick, we have A and B, and then a custom button right there. And it fits very well in the hand. When you're holding the gun just as is, it's perfect the way that it positions itself with the rest of your hand. And that is the one thing that would give this weapon away. That's the only thing. And I guarantee that, like, if you're prone to having the cops show up at your house for like welfare checks or something, having this laying around is going to cause issues. I had a few people comment on this. There is this question to where, like, there was an Australian dude who said that if he got caught with this in this house, it would be a crime. Now, Australia is basically a third world country at this point. I have no idea, but I know that in the US, if you have a weapon that looks realistic, you're expected to have some kind of an orange cap, orange tape around it to signify that, hey, this is a toy. And I admit, as cool as this is, I am surprised that there is no orange cap on the tip of this. You will never get this on a flight. You will never. You take this outside and you're going to get the cops called on you. It's wild. I mentioned at the top that this is the M4 3.0. And as a result, it has a joystick right here. And that's meant to substitute your left controller so that when you're holding it and running around, you can move and maneuver by using that joystick. And when it works phenomenally. Learning to use this in-game has been a struggle for me. And I'll start with like one really good example. Prior to this model, this is the version 3.0, the way that you would charge this and provide power was by using the magazine. And if you look inside, in the corner right there, there's a USB-C port, a female port. And this was initially a battery to where you plug it in, locks in, and your weapon has power. And it would probably stay better if that were still the case, because you'd have the wedge of that USB-C port kind of holding it in. But right now, this does not supply power. This is purely aesthetic, except in the case of a game making use of that full API to where you could potentially, in some circumstance, you could pull this out, that triggers the exit of a magazine, and then put it back in, and that triggers a reload. That is a thing that is possible with this weapon, but you're not going to find that across most games. But because this is not a battery anymore, and because it doesn't have the cling of that USB-C connection, there's a button that you press here, and if I press it, it falls out. It's reliable. But I can also just kind of pull it out, which I don't want to do that too much because I worry that I'm going to kind of increase the elasticity of that connection. But it is a thing to where if you have this in the weapon and it's not serving a purpose outside of aesthetics and you're running around, bouncing around, this thing will just fall out and land on your toe. And so I've been playing without it. And the way that this charges compared to the other model is actually not the magazine, but the buttstock. If you twist this and pull, you'll find that right there. And this has got that port. And so this weapon comes with a DC plug. And so you charge this, and when it's charged, put it on, twist, and it's done. This battery on the back, there is no light on this. There is no indicator to say how full it is or that it's charging at all, which makes things a little bit awkward. And, you know, it's just another indicator that these guys are making something awesome, but there's like no one around them to like script a mission statement, or like there should be a light on this that says green for fully charged or something. Likewise, this is completely unnecessary. This is purely aesthetic. I think it just adds weight more than anything, if that's something that you're looking for. This front part here, this muzzle, also twists off, and you'll find that there is a USB-C port there in the nose and a loose cable just hanging out right there. And so when you're putting this together, it's going to come disassembled. And so when you're putting it together, you would just grab that USB-C port, and this is not easy. It's not difficult, but it's a thing. Line that up, plug it in, and twist. If you go to their website and you look for software that you need to download to accompany this weapon and the glove, which I'm going to get into in a second, you're going to find that there are two applications. And I've got them right here. The first one is HIGVR NG. The second is HIGGlove NG, and that is not for this weapon. It's not even for the glove that came with the weapon I have now. In fact, I can't get this to work at all. So if you open that glove software, here's what you're going to find. It gives you this option to where you can pick the headset that you're using. So we're going to pick Quest 3 3S. And you can see that I can hit play on this right now. And what that does is it sets tracking into effect. But it won't work until these are highlighted. Now, if I launch SteamVR, this will highlight, but this will never come on. But the point is that glove software seems to be unnecessary. These guys sell a lot of stuff. They sell standard gun stocks like what you'd expect from Sandlaki or something. They sell this, and they also sell the gloves, but meant to be sold in pairs. They're talking about selling one glove for each hand, not to be used in tandem with the rifle, but to be used in something like VR chat, to where you're wearing the glove on each hand. And with that software, you'd be able to fine tune and make sure that a fist is a fist and that a pinch is a pinch. There are even weirdos like modifying this and putting it on those socks that have like finger toes to where you can wiggle your toes in VR chat. And that's why I'm not using VR chat. I won't comment on it. I have no interest in going into that place. I'm only here for the Gunstock. And so this glove, it offers quite a bit, but one thing that's missing and that's optional if you buy this is that right here there would typically be like a box with a joystick, so that if you had that, you would be just gloves and you would go like this to maneuver, and there would be two buttons for the A and B, and in doing that you would freely be able to just run around, turn left, right, jump, all of that stuff. And it seems super cool, seems super impressive, but it's not applicable to this. And I think the reason they sent me this glove without that joystick attachment is because it's meant to be used with this joystick on the Gunstock. This is your left controller. Now, sure, you're missing the menu button, but by grabbing and making a fist, that is the equivalent of select. And so if you're pointing at something with your hand, which works in these games, and you want to say calibrate height, you would point at it and just go like that. It would register it as a trigger pull. When you're in the game, you really have no need for any of the other buttons and functions on that controller. But if you do, if you need to reset your position, for instance, by long holding the menu button on the Quest controller, or if you want to like long hold the menu button on the left controller to access like desktop mode inside a virtual desktop, you can't do that with this gun. But there's nothing to stop you from taking the controller that's mounted on your glove and just grabbing it and using that function to long hold that. So when you plug up this gun with your PC and you activate that software, these controllers here, they take over. It completely disables the A, B buttons on your MetaQuest controller. Now that menu button will still work, but everything else is moot. The controllers at this point are really just there for tracking purposes. It's how it tracks your glove, it's how it tracks the weapon. Instead of Vive trackers or something else, it's just using the controller. And when you're installing the controller on this gun, I'm going to show you how you do it. There is this slot that you pull back, and this opens up. And I think you know where I'm going with this. And there's a very clear notch there that's carved out for the trigger pull on the Quest 3 controller. And you can see right there that the button just kind of fits snugly right there. And once you got that in there, you'll just pull this shut and you slide that on. And now it's locked in. It's not coming out. It's not going anywhere. As far as the glove goes, it attaches in a similar manner. If we put this on, your fingers are meant to extrude out of the gloves themselves. And this is a little more secure, I think. There is a latch that pulls down like that, and then this opens up. And similarly, there is a notch for the button, so you know where you're going and what you're doing with it. We're gonna put that on there, pull this up, and it's locked, it's on. And now it's being tracked. And so you can imagine that you're making use of this joystick right here, but you're also holding it like this, making use of this joystick, and the gun knows where your hand is because of the glove and the controller. But these doohickeys here are not just for looking at. I mean, it looks very steampunk, it looks very cool, but in practice they actually serve kind of a neat function. In a game like Onward or Contractors or Pop 1 or Pavlov, which I tried all of these, they don't have the animation presets to where you could unlock that full movement, to where because you wear this glove, you could look at your hand and go like that. It only has a few things. It's got like this and this and this. These granular motions, that's just for VR chat. But in a game like Contractors or Onward, what this is good for is if you want to grab a grenade off your chest, remember there are no buttons on here, it's just your hand. But because these are tracking your motion and it knows what movement you're making, if I reach to my chest and grab, it grabs in the game. If I reach to the ammo on the underside of a gun and I grab it and pull it out, it works because it knows that I'm grabbing it. And likewise, if I'm holding the gun and I reach for the underside of the muzzle and I grip it, it grabs it and kind of positions it firmly because it knows that I'm doing that. And so that's where the glove comes in handy. There is something to be said for holding the gun, like the actual gun that you're using in the game, to have it match perfectly from the butt stock to the trigger to where you're holding it. Instead of grabbing a controller and using some magnetic attachment and kind of clumsily fumbling for it, to actually grab the muzzle with this is magic. When it works incredibly. And I immediately understood why this existed. For all the other gun stocks that I love, for my Pro Tommy, it is still limited by the fact that you have to position magnets and thwop it on. And even the most seasoned expert will occasionally miss it. They'll occasionally fumble with that. And more about this in a second. But the point is that there's none of that with this. You're literally grabbing the weapon that you're firing. You're pulling the trigger of the gun that you're holding. There's nothing that's separating you from the weapon that you're holding. But now we're going to get into the realistic aspects of this weapon and what it's like using it. I can tell you that in Onward, I had the best experience. The gun actually matched what I was holding. I didn't have to do any kind of like calibrating. It just worked. I was able to throw grenades, I was able to pull out the ammo, put new ammo in, I can point, I can use quite a few finger gestures, and it translates well. But the tracking is a nightmare. The gun just kind of, shifts and disappears or flips around and faces me all of a sudden. I'll grab the ammo, I'll just out of nowhere and tug it out. If I'm trying to pull the charge pin back to kind of load the ammo, it'll not grab it sometimes, or sometimes it will grab it when I'm not meaning to. And especially when you want to go to grab the muzzle of the weapon to grip it and aim down the sights, it'll sometimes grab it and it sometimes won't. And sometimes you'll be firing it and it will just let go. And then because you're not like holding it two-handed, the muzzle of the gun will just tilt upward. And that was a common theme across everything I tried to some extent or another. I'm not sure where it lies because I've seen people using these gloves inside of VR chat and the results are impressive. They have full motor control over every single digit. But in that instance, they're also not fumbling with a gun stock that is prone to eclipsing the view of the controller itself. I think that's what it is. You've got this giant thing that you're holding and hoisting around, and I think that it occasionally blocks the camera's view of the controllers attached to it. I think that's what's happening. I think that if I were to invest in some lighthouses and put some Vive trackers on this instead, it would work phenomenally. And I'm honestly tempted to do it because when this works, it works just amazingly. If I could have that kind of fluid movement in Onward and Contractors without any of that motion tracking cutting out, it would just, there's no way. Like, I would stick with this all the time. It takes like 10 seconds to put this on, about the same for the gun. If I could rely on that, then it would be a no-brainer. And so part of me is toying with the idea of doing that. I probably won't, but I could, and it would be freaking awesome. But in terms of other games and the tracking that this offers and the gun, so Onward was the best in terms of just working out the gate, no corrections with the gun stock. Pavlov worked extremely well as well. No adjustments needed, it just worked. But again, that was a nightmare with the gun and the glove glitching out. Contractors was especially rough. If you go into the settings on that game and you specify that I'm using either a virtual gunstock or a physical gunstock, which in this case, you would think that you're using a physical gunstock, for the love of God, it'll actually, when you aim like this, it puts it over here, and there's no getting around it. I can adjust it in-game as much as I want. There's a setting where you can configure that, and you can use the joystick to lift it and move it and tilt it, but regardless, if I ever used either a virtual or physical gunstock, it always jacked it up. And once I turned that off and just disregarded it completely, then it was exactly where I wanted it. But even as that was working, your left hand, the glove, if my hand is here, in the game, it's over here. And so if I want to grab something off my chest, some ammo for instance, you can't. You have to grab right here. Like, it's this weird thing where you have to grab it and tug it, and then if you want to put it into the gun, you have to pop it into the gun or pop it into the gun. Like, it's offset by a huge margin, and I was not able to get around that. And that was only with contractors that I had that issue, and so it made that game completely unplayable. This software that you need to play these games requires SteamVR, which means that if you want to use Virtual Desktop and the VDXR runtime, it won't work. You have to have SteamVR running the game, which is kind of a bummer. There's a lot about VDXR and that AV1 codec that I think for a lot of us makes for this butter smooth experience, and you have to give that up and rely on SteamVR to make this work at all. This does not function off Bluetooth. When you buy this, they send you a dongle that plugs into your PC with USB-A. It's one for the glove and one for the gun. And so that's two ports that are taking up space on your computer, and it doesn't work with Bluetooth. You cannot use this with standalone. It has to be PCVR. And so that's limiting on a couple levels. It means that you're either turning off VDXR or just using Metal Link, I think, and it's not ideal. Now, this gun has haptic feedback. When you fire it, it's not just a vibration, it's not a rumble. It actually throws a hunk of metal back into your shoulder. Not in the same way as the ForceTube. The ForceTube has this hunk right here that actually kind of thrusts into your shoulder, and it thumps you. It doesn't hurt, but it's a noticeable feeling. It's more like the ProVolver. This right here, you can see that this moves forward and back, and there's this hunk of metal in here. And what it's doing is it's spring loading and thrusting it back so that when you fire, there's an actual force feedback that kind of makes you feel like you're being thrust backward a little bit. And there's something like that going on inside of the M4 3.0. But it's not in the shoulder. It's in the center of the gun. And so you get that feedback and you feel like it's really kicking, but you don't feel it in the shoulder the same way that the ForceTube does. The switch right here for multi-burst, single, and safety, it works like everything else if a developer implements the API to the fullest extent that they can. But for the average game, that does nothing. It's all just there to be there, and that's it. In reality, if you want to turn this gun on, you have two buttons, 1, 2, and the one closest to the magazine, if you long hold it, that light will illuminate. And green means that it's connected to the dongle. And it just connects to the dongle. Like, there's nothing that you have to do. If you're in the vicinity of it, it just works. This button next to it, that adjusts the fire rate. And so if I long hold that, it becomes a kind of a cyan, a light blue. And that means that when I fire, that's multi-burst. And this is a loud weapon, by the way. And so if I long hold that again, it's going to turn it off completely to where that doesn't work at all. It's quiet now. And if I turn it back on, solid green. What solid green does, I think, they had an update that they mentioned on Twitter the other day to where typically that would have resulted in just a single fire, a single burst. But now solid green actually syncs to whatever the game is doing. This time last year, I think that if you had it on solid green, it would have just been a single fire thing. But if you happen to pick up an automatic weapon in the game, you'd fire 15 rounds, but it would still only fire once every time you pulled the trigger as far as the haptics were concerned. And so now that setting reacts just like the ProTube, to where it outputs whatever you're doing in the game, which is cool and works well for the most part. It's a little bit janky, to where if you fire a steady 6 shots, it might only go off 4 times, or if you fire a single shot, it might rapidly output 2 bursts, but more or less it works well. But so that leaves us with, should you get this? I have faith that this is going to get better. I have faith that the tracking will improve. These Quest controllers are not bad at tracking things. They work fantastic in the Quest 3 just all by themselves. And so when it's breaking and whipping all over the place and the gun isn't keeping tracking, I have to assume that it's just software on their end and it needs some fine tuning. And so I'm hopeful that it will get better. But right now, there are these trade-offs. If you're choosing between the M4 and the Pro Tommy, which is the ForceTube attached to the ProVolver, so that it's this semi-permanent thing that you've got a thing that attaches here and you can remove it with a magnet and reload and put it back on, and it works, and I love it, and it's my favorite device. But at the end of the day, this doesn't work with everything. This requires a built-in API or a mod. If you have 50 games, it'll work with 8 of them. Like it doesn't have a ton of support. But what these guys have done is it seems as if they've bypassed that completely. They don't need permission to make this work. I don't fully understand what's happening here, but it seems like when you sync this up, it doesn't matter the game. If it has a gun, it just digs into the guts of that thing and it swaps out your Quest controller with this, and it just works. In some cases better than others, but there is no collaboration between HIGVR and these game developers. And so the use case is wider. It offers more games. The Pro Tommy that I have there works with standalone Quest. This does not. And so, if you wanted to use this with a standalone Quest, you're out of luck, you're done. Get the Pro Tommy. But if you're using PCVR and it's a question of should you get this or the Pro Tommy, which in my mind, there is no other substitute. It's this or that. Like, these are the only 2 people doing this in this space. The Pro Tommy is without question better tracked and more versatile in the games that it works with. There is zero jank to it when a game is scripted to work with it. The M4 3.0 works with more games, but right now it's a bit janky. The tracking is not amazing. If it's working great for 20 minutes and onward, that's to say nothing of the hour that I spent trying to let go of the muzzle or cock the weapon, reposition it as I'm running, and dying in the process. So when this works, it's the most immersive, amazing thing in the world, and there is no substitute. But it doesn't work often, and the tracking, at least in conjunction with the MetaQuest 3 controllers attached to it, leaves a ton to be wanted, and I hope they update it and fix it. And if there is a way of calibrating the glove to where it makes grabbing this more clear and immediate, and if there's, a way of doing it that hasn't been listed and I have no idea, and it does exist, but I'm late finding out, then I will make another video or a community post updating that and letting you know. But they're certainly not going out of their way to make it obvious. To close this out, that gun and the glove, because they go together, are this much. And to be clear, the gun is this much, the glove is this much. The Pro Tommy, which is a combination of the ProVolver and the ForceTube. The ForceTube is this much, and the Pro Tommy is this much. You can use the code BringhurstVR to save 10% off the HIGVR Gunstock. It's a great way of saving money and supporting my channel. In the end, aspects of it are a little bit cheap, 3D printed, broken, but the bulk of this gun is injection molded. It feels solid. It's hyper realistic. It looks incredible. And there isn't a single thing about it that is just for show. Every single aspect of this gun has the potential to work in game, if only the game developer scripted it to do such. Which is to say that every switch, every knob has a sensor built in, and it's incredible. Just fix that tracking or go with Vive trackers, and my God, it's nearly perfect. So please subscribe and like this video and comment and hit that notification bell. You'd be doing my channel a world of good. Thank you again, honestly, for HIGVR sending this stuff. These guys are amazing. They're one of a handful of people who are actually doing these kinds of advanced haptics in VR, and it's impressive. Thank you again. If you guys want, I have membership tiers where you can get early access content, members only live streams, access to marbles, and it's a great way of supporting my channel and getting some cool stuff in the process. You guys have been watching Bringhurst VR, and Godspeed.